So in my life, even with the relatively limited experience and understanding that I have of it, I have come across difficult times, and unfortunately that's the reality we live in. We live in a broken, hurting world. But in these times I've often found encouragement and peace from the Bible, which is why we're doing these. And sometimes I find that a particular verse will stick out to me, or I'll notice it. And then again, a few days later. Then I'll find it in my devotional, then the app on my phone, then it'll be in a song, then someone will say it to me, and I find myself almost chased by this verse. It will refuse to allow me to ignore it or forget it. And the verses I'm going to be looking at today come from one of these situations for me. I found it after being chased, so to speak, by it. It comes from Isaiah chapter 41, verses 8 to 10. But you, O Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, you descendants of Abraham, my friend. I took you from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners I called you. I said, you are my servant, I have chosen you and not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So, as I said earlier, this is written by Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, and it was written to God's people, Israel, and these were his chosen people, the people who he promised he would save the rest of the world, save all nations by. But they weren't in an easy time either at this point. This was written to them when they were in exile in a foreign land called Babylon. They'd been taken captive into different homes, different land, different culture, different languages, and a different normal. Perhaps you know the feeling, you can relate to it. With our different times right now, a new normal. We've heard that phrase a lot. Almost like we're living in a different land or a parallel universe. Everything's the same, but entirely different. But also, we are in very different circumstances. We're not evidently taken captive. We're not having to learn a new language. We're not having to be forced into a culture and to submit to an authority which we know nothing about. Would these people not be questioning where God was? Would they not feel abandoned? Perhaps we have in this time. Perhaps we feel that God has left us. God has abandoned us in the midst of this pandemic. Where can he be? Everything seems so dark. Where can he be? But here in these words, we see God saying to his people, he calls them friend. He reminds them that he called them. There's very evidently a relationship recalled between God and his people. And those magnificent verses at the end of 9 and 10. I said, you are my servant. I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Okay, fair enough. So what does that mean for us? Well, 1, God hasn't changed. In all eternity that he has existed, he hasn't changed. In all eternity that he will exist, he hasn't changed and will not change. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. 2, when we choose to follow Christ, to follow God, we become his people. And God's promises remain the same to us today. So we can find courage in these words, comfort, knowing that God hasn't changed. His character here to protect his people, to be with them, to strengthen them and help them, that hasn't changed. He hasn't changed. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.